This is the Buffett Mindset channel where we practice patience and calm wealth building daily. If you enjoy these types of videos, consider liking and subscribing. This will mean a lot to the channel. You must understand that Edison's triumph was not in the lamp itself, but in the law that his mind had already accepted as fact long before the bulb ever glowed. He did not see himself as failing 10,000 times. He saw himself as proving 10,000 ways it would not work until at last the one way stood shining. That is law one in flesh, the law of thought, the law that you always become what you think about most. Hold that law steady, for it is the foundation stone upon which every other law rests. Now let us ride into law two, the law of definiteness of purpose. A man who wakes without aim is already defeated, for his energy scatters in 1,000 directions and none of them bear fruit. The world does not bend to vague desire, it bends to definite demand. Consider Lincoln, who through failures and defeats never lost sight of his one definite purpose, the preservation of a nation and the freedom of its people. That purpose was written deeper than his pain, and so even when his heart broke, his body ached, and the voices of critics howled, he pressed on. Definite purpose turns storms into stepping stones. Without it, the strongest man drifts like a leaf on the river. With it, even the weakest man becomes immovable. Law 3 is the law of repetition. What you do once whispers, what you do daily shouts. Every action, every word, every thought repeated becomes habit, and habit is the invisible script that your life obeys. You need not carve your destiny in stone, for you carve it in the grooves of your nervous system by what you repeat. Look at Buffett himself, who did not become the world's most trusted investor by a single bold stroke, but by repeating the same disciplined habits of study, patience, and decision for decades until they became second nature. The man who repeats builds rhythm, and rhythm builds destiny. Law 4, the law of association. Show me your companions, and I will show you your future. A sovereign does not share his creed with doubters, nor does he let his fire be smothered by the smoke of cowards. He chooses influences as carefully as a jeweler selects stones, for he knows that the voices he allows near him are the architects of his subconscious. Carnegie surrounded himself with thinkers, with builders, with men who spoke of possibility. He rejected the company of drifters, for he knew their disease was contagious. So too must you guard your associations, for they will lift or lower you. Law 5, the law of decision. Opportunity waits for no man. The man who hesitates loses not because fate is cruel, but because hesitation is drift disguised. Every titan I studied moved with decision, quick and final. They would rather decide wrong and correct the course than float forever in limbo. Decision is the blade that cuts through fog. A man who cannot decide is a man already conquered. Law 6, the law of faith. Not faith as religion alone, but faith as the alignment of thought and emotion so deeply that the subconscious obeys without question. Ford repeated to himself and to the world, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. That was not a clever slogan, it was the law of faith spoken in simple words. A man who believes moves mountains because he never even sees them as mountains, only as steps. Law 7, the law of persistence. The drifter quits when tired. The sovereign continues even when weary, even when unseen, even when mocked. Schwab rose from a laborer to the steel throne not by brilliance but by sheer persistence. When others gave up, persistence is proof of faith in motion. Law 8, the law of imagination. Every empire is first a picture in the mind of its builder. Without imagination, purpose has no shape. Without imagination, thought has no image to cling to. Edison saw the light in his mind long before it burned in glass. Ford saw the automobile in every family long before steel was bent to his vision. Imagination is not play, it is prophecy. Law 9, the law of self-control. A man who conquers the world but not himself will soon see his world collapse. Solomon, though the wisest, faltered here in his later years, letting compromise break his kingdom. Control your appetites, your temper, your tongue, and you will control your destiny. Fail here, and no other law will save you. Law 10, the law of service. The man who seeks only for himself shrinks. The man who serves expands. Wealth flows to the man who solves problems for others, who multiplies value beyond himself. Rockefeller built not by hoarding, but by building systems that served millions. Buffett too says the best investment you can make is in yourself, but he lives by investing in companies that serve multitudes. Service magnifies sovereignty. And at last, Law 11, the law of rhythm. All life moves in cycles, sowing and reaping, rising and falling, effort and rest. The sovereign does not curse the seasons, he rides them. He plants when it is time to plant. He waits when it is time to wait. He harvests when it is time to harvest. The drifter panics in winter and squanders in summer, but the sovereign knows rhythm is law and peace comes from obedience to the cycle. These 11 laws are not theories, they are not fleeting inspiration, they are eternal structures waiting for your obedience. And if you take them not as words but as creed, not as poetry but as program, not as entertainment but as instruction, then 7 days from now you will feel different. 7 weeks from now you will move different. 7 months from now you will live different, and 7 years from now you will not recognize yourself. Write them, repeat them, live them, and let them write you. Law 1 must be engraved upon your heart before any other can stand, for thought is the root, and all fruit springs from it. Understand this with the seriousness of life and death. You are always becoming the thing you think about most. Not sometimes, not occasionally, always. A man who fills his mind with worry may not see chains upon his wrists, yet he is shackled all the same. A man who fills his mind with anger may smile in public, yet he is burning his own barns in silence. A man who fills his mind with fear may still rise each morning to work, but every effort he makes is secretly bent toward his own defeat. Do you see? Your thoughts are not idle guests, they are architects. Every repetition is a stone they place, every belief is mortar, and soon a house is built. The question is not whether a house will be built, but whether you will live in a palace of faith or a prison of doubt. Think of the farmer. If he plants corn, he will not reap wheat. If he plants thorns, he will not reap grapes. The soil does not argue, it obeys. So too your mind. It does not mock you, it does not conspire against you. It simply grows whatever you allow to be sown and repeated. That is why Buffett reads for hours each day, not to pass time, but to plant carefully. That is why Carnegie asked me that piercing question, what do you think about when no one is watching? Because he knew the man who controls his secret thought controls his destiny. If your thoughts are scattered, your results will be scattered. If your thoughts are clouded, your results will be clouded. But if your thoughts are definite, repeated, and charged with emotion, then the world has no choice but to reflect them. Do not tell me what you hope for, show me what you think about daily. Do not show me your resolutions, show me your repetitions. For the sovereign is not crowned by chance, but by creed, and creed is nothing more than thought repeated until it becomes rhythm, and rhythm repeated until it becomes identity. Say it aloud each morning and each night. I become what I think about. Etch it until even your silence repeats it. For this is Law 1, and upon it every other law stands. Law 2 is definiteness of purpose, and without it a man is already defeated before the first blow is struck. For the world does not bend to vague desire, it bends only to clear demand. A drifter may rise each morning with strength in his body and hope in his heart, but if he has no definite aim, his strength scatters into small errands, his hope dissolves into small distractions, and by nightfall he is weary with nothing to show. The sovereign, on the other hand, begins with a purpose so clear it burns through fog like the morning sun. He does not waste his fire on 1,000 tiny pursuits. He channels it like a river into one direction until mountains move. Think of Lincoln, mocked, defeated, dismissed, yet his purpose was carved deeper than his failures, to preserve a nation and free its people. That purpose outlasted his defeats, outshouted his critics, and even when his heart was broken, it kept his feet moving forward. Purpose is stronger than pain, stronger than mockery, stronger than loss. The man without it will always surrender at the first storm. The man with it will see storms as proof of his direction. Look at Buffett, who has lived his life with a single aim, disciplined investment in businesses he understands. Decades have passed, opportunities flashed by like lightning, fortunes rose and collapsed in chaos, but he remained steady because his purpose was definite. He did not chase every glittering distraction. He stayed fixed on his one law, and the world came to bow before him. You may say, but what if I do not yet know my grand purpose? Then choose one direction and commit. For law 2 does not demand perfection, it demands decision. Better a man with a small definite aim than a man with 1,000 wandering dreams, for the law rewards the one who acts with clarity. Purpose turns time from an enemy into an ally. Without purpose, a year is wasted before you notice. With purpose, a single day is enough to transform your life. Purpose sharpens thought, fuels repetition, and anchors faith. Without it, even the other laws will falter. With it, every other law is multiplied. Write your purpose now, not tomorrow, not after advice, not after permission. Write it and guard it. Repeat it until even in sleep it whispers back to you. For this is law 2, and it is the anchor of sovereignty. Law 3 is the law of repetition, and it is the hammer that shapes your identity on the anvil of time. Understand me well, for this law will either forge you into iron or grind you into dust, depending on how you wield it. What you do once is a whisper. What you do daily becomes a roar that the universe cannot ignore. Most men fail not because they lack opportunity, but because they cannot hold a pattern long enough to see its fruit. They plant a seed and dig it up the next day to check if it has grown, never realizing that growth obeys rhythm, not impatience. A drifter says, I tried and let's go. A sovereign says, I repeat and hold steady until the harvest comes. Repetition is the mother of mastery, the unseen force that carves grooves in the mind so deep that the body follows without hesitation. You may think you are free, but you are already a slave to your repetitions. If you repeat excuses, you will live in excuses. If you repeat fear, you will walk in fear. If you repeat hesitation, your life will be an endless waiting room. But if you repeat faith, you will live in faith. If you repeat discipline, you will walk in power. If you repeat decision, your destiny will obey. Think of Buffett again, who has said that his success is nothing more than rationality repeated over decades. He did not become wealthy by luck or brilliance in a single moment. He became wealthy because day after day, year after year, he repeated the same habits of patience, study, and focus, while others chased noise. Repetition carved his fortune as surely as water carves canyons. Consider Edison, whose 10,000 failed attempts were not failures at all, but repetitions sharpening his rhythm until at last the light appeared. Repetition is law in motion, and it never lies. You already know this truth. The man who trains his body daily grows strong, while the man who skips decays. The same is true of the mind. Your subconscious does not obey effort, it obeys rhythm. Speak a thought once and it floats away. Speak it daily with belief and it descends into your very marrow until it becomes you. That is why I tell you to write, to repeat, to rehearse your creed. Not because I love words, but because I know words repeated shape worlds. Most men underestimate repetition because it is not glamorous. They want lightning, not rain, but lightning dazzles for a moment and is gone. Rain repeated builds rivers that carve valleys, nourish fields, and outlive generations. So choose your repetitions carefully. Guard your morning and your night, for those are the gates to your subconscious, and what you repeat at those gates will walk into your life unchallenged. Say aloud, I will repeat only what I want to become. Etch it into your rhythm until even silence echoes it back to you. For this is Law 3, and without it, no other law will hold. Law 4 is the law of association, and it is one of the most underestimated forces in a man's life. For though you may believe yourself strong, no man can long outlive the influence of those he keeps closest. Show me your companions, and I will show you your results. For your subconscious is not only fed by your own words, but by the constant drip of voices, attitudes, and patterns that surround you. A drifter fills his table with other drifters, men who mock ambition, who laugh at discipline, who trade gossip for greatness. He may believe himself immune, but over time their poison seeps into him, shaping his thought, dulling his fire, pulling him back into mediocrity. The sovereign, by contrast, chooses his company with the same care a jeweler chooses gems, testing them, examining them, guarding against the counterfeit. He surrounds himself with those who sharpen him, who remind him of law, who speak possibility rather than complaint. Carnegie knew this when he formed his mastermind alliance, surrounding himself with thinkers and builders who spoke of industry, expansion, and service. He understood that the mind multiplies its power when joined with other minds moving in the same direction. This law is not suggestion, it is structural. Association is a current, and you are not standing still in it. You are being carried one way or the other. If you walk daily with men who drift, you will drift. If you walk daily with men of decision, you will decide. Think of Buffett, who formed his closest bond with Charlie Munger, a man who sharpened his rationality and magnified his discipline. Together they built not by competition, but by the sharpening power of association. Understand this, you cannot rise alone, nor can you sink alone. Every word spoken around you is a seed. Every attitude tolerated near you is a program. Every pattern repeated by those closest to you is a rhythm pulling at your own. Guard your circle like a king guards his throne room. Do not share your creed with doubters, for their disbelief will seep into your subconscious like smoke. Do not seek comfort in the company of cowards, for their fear will quietly train your own. Walk with men who remind you of law, who burn with faith, who repeat discipline until it becomes your own. Even if you must walk alone for a season, better solitude than poison, better silence than corruption, better the ache of loneliness than the drift of corrupted association. For this law is merciless. It will lift you or it will bury you. Speak it aloud. I will guard my associations as I guard my destiny. Repeat it until even your shadow knows it. For this is law 4, and it is the company you keep that writes the script of the man you become. Law 5 is the law of decision, and it separates kings from beggars, builders from drifters, destinies fulfilled from destinies wasted. For opportunity does not linger, it does not wait, it does not tap politely upon your door a second time. It flashes like lightning and disappears into the night, and only the man who decides quickly and firmly will harness its fire. The drifter hesitates not because he is cautious, but because he is enslaved to doubt. He asks too many voices for permission. He waits for the world to confirm what he already knows within, and by the time he moves, the chance has passed. But the sovereign decides. He may not have all the details, he may not know every outcome, but he knows that law favors movement, that destiny bows to decision. Andrew Carnegie did not build his empire by waiting for perfect conditions. He decided, he moved, he adjusted. Henry Ford did not wait until every critic was silenced. He decided that the automobile would serve the common man, and he bent reality to that decision. Buffett himself has said that indecision is the thief of fortune, and his discipline lies not only in the investments he makes, but in the clarity with which he says no to distractions. Do you see the pattern? Decision is power because it anchors thought into action. It crystallizes belief into movement. It commands the subconscious to obey without delay. A man who cannot decide is a man already conquered, for he has surrendered his sovereignty to the fog of hesitation. The devil himself confessed in my interview with him that indecision is one of his sharpest tools, for it paralyzes men, steals their time, and drains their will. A weak man believes that not choosing is safety, but not choosing is the greatest choice of all. It is the choice of drift, and drift always leads to decay. The sovereign knows that even a wrong decision carries more power than none, for wrong decisions can be corrected, but drift can never be recovered. Decision is the blade that cuts through fog, the hammer that breaks the lock of fear, the torch that lights the path ahead. Say it aloud. I will decide quickly, and I will adjust as I move. Speak it until hesitation flees from you, until your very posture communicates certainty, until the world itself bends because you no longer wait to act. This is Law 5, and it is the law that keeps your purpose alive when storms press in, when critics shout, when doubt whispers. Decide, and decide now, for the world belongs not to the man who waits, but to the man who commands. Law 6 is the law of faith, and it is the heartbeat of all the others, for without faith even the greatest plan lies dormant, even the clearest purpose fades into shadow. Faith is not mere hope, not idle wishing, not the trembling prayer of a man who does not act. Faith is thought fused with emotion, belief wrapped in certainty, conviction spoken and repeated until the subconscious bows and the world is forced to obey. A man without faith walks as a beggar, though he may wear a crown, for his words carry no weight. His actions lack conviction, and his dreams vanish like mist in the morning sun. But the man of faith is unstoppable, not because the world is kind to him, but because the world has no choice but to conform to his inner law. Ford spoke it best. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. That sentence is not philosophy, it is prophecy. For belief is not an accessory, it is the very substance of reality, blueprint. Buffett built his empire not on luck, but on faith in principles repeated so long and so steadily that they became second nature. He believes in patience, in discipline, in value, and because he believes, he acts accordingly, and because he acts accordingly, the law multiplies his results. Edison failed 10,000 times, but his faith in the eventual success burned brighter than every failed filament. Rockefeller endured criticism, political attacks, and public scorn, but his faith in his vision carried him through storms that would have broken smaller men. Faith is not passive, it is aggressive. It is the force that pushes back against fear, that silences the whispers of doubt, that carries a man through the dark night when there is no evidence yet of dawn. Faith is law because your subconscious cannot tell the difference between reality and belief when belief is repeated with emotion. Feed it fear and it obeys. Feed it doubt and it obeys. But feed it faith and the world must bow. Do not confuse faith with blind optimism. Faith is not pretending, it is choosing deliberately which thoughts you will allow to dominate your mind. It is training yourself to speak only of what you intend to build, to rehearse only the images you intend to live, to reject every suggestion of weakness as if it were poison. Faith is discipline, not accident. Faith is law, not wish. And when you speak aloud each morning, when you command yourself with conviction, when you see already in your mind the man you are becoming, you are living this law. Say it now. I believe in my purpose, and because I believe, it must become. Repeat it until your doubt dies, until your eyes sharpen, until your actions carry a weight they never carried before. For this is Law 6, and it is the bridge between thought and being, between imagination and manifestation, between who you are and who you will become. Law 7 is the law of persistence, and it is the difference between men who shine for a moment and fade into nothing, and men whose names echo through centuries. For talent without persistence rots, intelligence without persistence drifts, opportunity without persistence vanishes, but even the smallest seed pressed into the ground with relentless care will one day break the soil and rise toward the sun. Persistence is proof of faith in motion. It is belief embodied not in words but in the refusal to stop. A drifter begins 100 endeavors but abandons each when the feelings fade, when the applause quiets, when the first obstacle appears. He confuses excitement for endurance, motivation for discipline, the spark for the fire, and so his life becomes a series of half-built bridges, crumbled foundations, unlit torches. But the sovereign knows that the spark is not enough, the applause is not enough, the dream alone is not enough. He understands that storms will come, that nights will grow long, that fatigue will gnaw at his resolve, and yet he persists. Charles Schwab did not rise from laborer to the steel throne because he was the most brilliant mind in industry. He rose because he refused to quit when others faltered. Lincoln did not preserve a nation because the journey was smooth, but because even in his darkest hours, even when defeat seemed certain, he pressed forward. Edison's 10,000 attempts were not failures, but monuments to persistence, each one proof that he had not surrendered, that he had not drifted, that his belief had taken root in discipline. Buffett himself has said the stock market is a mechanism for transferring wealth from the impatient to the patient. And what is patience if not persistence extended across years? Persistence is law because rhythm is law, and rhythm is forged not in bursts but in steady, unbroken beats. Think of the river. It does not crash violently against the mountain once and retreat. It flows steadily, persistently, carving valleys, reshaping stone, transforming landscapes over time. That is the power of persistence. Most men are defeated not by failure but by delay. They plant, but when the harvest does not appear in a week, they walk away. They exercise discipline, but when results do not come quickly, they call it useless and abandon it. They whisper their affirmations, but when the world does not immediately bend, they return to doubt. But the sovereign knows that delay is law testing his rhythm, and he refuses to break cadence. Say it aloud. I will persist until success obeys. Repeat it until the words are carved into your bones. For this is Law 7, and it is the law that proves faith, that multiplies thought, that outlasts storms and silences critics. The Law 8 is the law of imagination, and it is the furnace where all creation is first forged. Every empire, every invention, every revolution began not in the marketplace, not in the battlefield, not in the factory, but in the secret chambers of imagination. A drifter scoffs at imagination, calling it childish fancy, but the sovereign knows it is prophecy. For imagination paints the image that faith clings to, it gives shape to purpose, it provides the subconscious with the picture it must obey. Without imagination, definiteness of purpose remains abstract, a skeleton without flesh. Without imagination, repetition has no vision to rehearse, faith has no image to hold, persistence has no destination to pursue. Edison saw the electric light in his mind long before his laboratory produced it. Ford saw a horseless carriage for the common man when the world called it madness. Carnegie saw an industrial empire when he was only a poor boy from Scotland. Rockefeller saw systems of oil flowing like blood through the veins of a nation long before the pipelines were laid. Buffett imagines markets not as chaos but as a weighing machine, a patient mechanism that will always reward value in time. Do you see? Imagination is not escape, it is design. It is not a diversion, it is the blueprint of reality. Your mind is a workshop, and every night, every idle moment, you are sketching the patterns of your future. A drifter sketches disaster, rehearses failure, replays insult, and so his subconscious obediently builds more of the same. But the sovereign sketches victory, rehearses faith, replays the image of the man he is becoming, and so the subconscious builds bridges to it, drawing resources, allies, and opportunities into alignment. This law is why you must guard not only your words but your images. The books you read, the pictures you dwell on, the daydreams you permit, all are architects shaping the house of your future. Say it aloud. I will imagine boldly, clearly, repeatedly, until the world must obey. Repeat it until you see your destiny as vividly as your reflection in the glass. For imagination charged with faith, repeated with persistence, guarded by purpose, and refined by decision is unstoppable. The world itself is clay in the hands of a man whose imagination is fused with law. For this is Law 8, and it is the divine spark that separates builders from beggars, creators from drifters, kings from slaves. Law 9 is the law of self-control, and it is the fortress wall without which every other law is breached and plundered. For what good is imagination if you cannot bridle your impulses long enough to bring it forth? What good is faith if at the first sting of emotion you abandon it? What good is persistence if every temptation lures you away from the path you chose? A drifter may know the other laws in theory, may even practice them for a season, but because he cannot govern his own appetites, his own tongue, his own temper, his own hours, he is undone. He trades the eternal for the immediate, the crown for a crust of bread, the throne for a fleeting comfort. But the sovereign understands that mastery of self is mastery of destiny. He is not ruled by hunger, by lust, by fear, by rage, by fatigue. He commands them, he feels them, but he is not enslaved to them. He is like the rider who feels the power of the horse beneath him. The beast may snort and buck, but the reins are firm in his hand. Without self-control, the horse will throw the rider into the dust. With self-control, the horse becomes the instrument of his speed and power. Consider Solomon, whose wisdom built kingdoms, yet whose lack of restraint in later years divided his house and shattered his legacy. Even the wisest man is ruined if he loses self-control. Consider Buffett, who has lived a life of staggering wealth yet remains disciplined in his spending, modest in his dwelling, focused in his choices. He has not been seduced by every glittering distraction, and that is why his fortune endured when others collapsed. Consider Rockefeller, who was accused, attacked, hated, yet never allowed rage to rule him. His silence, his measured responses, his control turned enemies into stepping stones. Do you see? Self-control is not repression, it is redirection. It is the choice to spend your fire on purpose rather than on waste. It is the art of saying no when no protects your yes. It is the guard that keeps your repetitions pure, your purpose steady, your persistence unbroken. Say it aloud. I master myself, therefore I master my destiny. Repeat it until your very impulses obey, until even in silence you feel the reins firm in your grip. For Law 9 is the law of self-control, and without it every other law is but sand with it. Every other law becomes steel. Law 10 is the law of service, and it is the crown jewel of wealth, the hidden hinge upon which all true greatness swings. For the world does not yield its treasures to the man who hoards, but to the man who multiplies value for others. A drifter thinks only of what he can take, what he can grab, what he can secure for himself before nightfall, and because his thoughts are small, his results are small. His life becomes a circle of scarcity where he clutches what little he has and watches it slip away. But the sovereign understands that the surest path to riches, to respect, to legacy, is to render more service than he is paid for, to give more value than is expected, to plant more seed than is demanded. Carnegie built steel not for himself alone, but to shape cities, bridges, railways that lifted entire nations, and the fortune returned to him was proportionate to the service he rendered. Ford did not merely sell cars, he democratized motion. He gave ordinary families freedom to travel and work, and in doing so he built an empire. Rockefeller harnessed oil not to enrich himself alone, but to power homes, factories, and industries, and though the world condemned him, the law of service multiplied his fortune beyond measure. Buffett repeats this law in his investments, seeking not quick gain but businesses that serve millions with products they trust, and that is why his wealth is so steady, so compounded, so resilient. Do you see? Service is not weakness, service is power. It is the secret that turns wealth into empire, that turns money into legacy, that turns opportunity into destiny. Most men resent work, cut corners, and offer the minimum, but law punishes such men, reducing their harvest, stripping their barns, leaving them frustrated and bitter. The sovereign embraces work as service, offers his hand fully, commits his mind fully, pours his excellence into even the smallest task, and by so doing aligns with the law that all creation obeys: to serve, to multiply, to contribute. Say it aloud: I will serve more, give more, build more than is demanded of me. Repeat it until your very posture communicates it, until every man who meets you feels the abundance of your spirit. For Law 10 is the law of service, and it is the invisible contract between you and destiny. As you serve, so shall you rise. Law 11 is the law of legacy, and it is the final measure of a man's life. For what is power if it dies with you? What is wealth if it vanishes when you are gone? What is greatness if no one after you is lifted by it? A drifter thinks only of his own comfort, his own fleeting pleasure, and when he dies, his name is forgotten within weeks. His influence vanishes, his wealth dissipates like smoke, he leaves nothing but dust. But the sovereign lives with the awareness that every decision, every action, every word is carving an inheritance deeper than gold, heavier than land, greater than titles. He understands that legacy is not simply what he leaves behind, but what he builds into others while he lives. Consider Carnegie, who gave away his fortune to libraries, schools, institutions that still stand generations later. His steel has rusted, but his legacy of service and knowledge remains. Consider Ford, whose systems and vision reshaped not only industry but culture itself. His name is not merely a brand, it is a symbol of innovation for the common man. Consider Buffett, who has pledged to return the bulk of his wealth to serve humanity, understanding that fortune is a trust, not a toy. Legacy is not measured by applause in your lifetime, but by impact long after your voice is silent. Rockefeller was vilified by many, but his foundation still fund cures, education, and progress more than a century later. Edison's light still burns in every corner of the world. Lincoln's decision still holds a nation together. Solomon's wisdom still guides seekers thousands of years after his passing. This is the proof of the law. Time cannot erase true legacy, for true legacy is not carved in stone, but in spirit, in mind, in law. A drifter wastes years chasing comfort that evaporates. A sovereign spends years building values, systems, and structures that endure. Legacy is why discipline matters, why faith matters, why persistence matters. For without legacy, all victories are hollow, and with legacy, even defeat is transformed into teaching for those who come after. Say it aloud: I will live with legacy in mind. I will build not only for myself, but for generations. I will plant trees under whose shade I may never sit. Repeat it until your choices align with it, until every moment of your life carries the weight of eternity. For this is Law 11, and it is the crown of sovereignty, to live in such a way that your name becomes more than letters, your life becomes more than years, and your existence becomes a beacon that guides others long after you are gone.